Hello and welcome. It is Magnus time yet again. This episode's going up a little bit late, but it's an exciting one, so hopefully you'll forgive me. It's episode 44, Back to Basic. Green screen isn't too happy with me in this one, in this shirt, but all the rest of my clothes are in the washer. So it's laundry day and it's Magnus day. Our classification number is CAT3RAC 2175-2603-1987-1206-2024. Prescience Computing Equilibrium. Oh, this is such a fun episode. If you have not been listening with the transcript, you really should, especially for this episode, because all of the German gets direct translations given in the transcript, which is important because there's a lot of German in this episode. But also, Hinrich is so good in this episode, and then we get the break. There's so much to talk about just in the first half, but then in the second half, which seems less important at first, we get the most important information. So let's cover it. The idea of Hinrich and Heimlich in a coffee house is incredible, and I love it. And thank you so much, Magnus, for that. They meet with Klara Vogel, who was Stasi, and the line, "We could smell your sins," from Hinrich. Hinrich does not like this woman. Also, you will probably hear the air conditioner again, and I'm so sorry, because it's 1,000,000 degrees. But Hinrich does not like this woman. She was one of his, or at least a child that he knew of, right? And she is very afraid of him. She doesn't want to help Alice at first. Her threats don't work, but Heinrich's do. And he mentions the little angry girl who paid back all of the children for laughing at her until everyone went into hiding. And obviously, she paid back the adults as well when she was older. And as he's doing that, the cafe falls away, and you hear the shaking of plates as it just, in my head, he's getting bigger, right, as everything falls away. And then when the laughter no longer sounds clear, Hinrich will stop her. So he's held a grudge against her, it seems. She then talks about Klaus Schweitzer, how the tattoos that were on him, the alchemical symbols, reminded her of her own grandmother and her folk beliefs, of how he's from HFE, which I put in my notes here, that HFE, and I don't know this for sure, but HFE is probably talking about human factor engineering, right? When it comes to the human factor in engineering. I don't know why I doubled down on that sentence, but you know what I mean. That was his specialty, and that they had him work on a machine a program that would track the fears and predict disloyalties in people. And tracking the fears here is like lowercase f, right? It's tracking using fear, but it finds uppercase F, right? How he was always looking for more data, and by the time their relationship had finished, their very strange, forced relationship on her part, by the time it had finished, Klaus no longer knew where the love ended and the fear began. And it was his fear of her that pushed him to the level that he got to, where she left him with 1 week of food and came back to see him 2 weeks later, things like that, where she was terribly abusive to him. And he had carved alchemical symbols into the walls and the keyboard and his skin, but he had cracked some code, right? Whether because he had figured out the formula that the fears are bound by, or, as we're going to see in the second half of this, I believe he found the metrics by which they are tracked. He found the balance. And because of that, he was able to seemingly predict when these things would happen, when these strange situations. Karen Mueller with the meat grinder, and Matthias with the electrical cable. And that when she got back there, he had fled, but there was an envelope that she knows has the time and date of her death on it as well. It's really interesting that he figured out how to see it before it happened, and Freddy shows us those that have already happened, right? And I have a theory on that as well that we'll get to in a minute. And when she leaves the envelope because she's terrified of Hinrich, and he promises to return it to her, because she had asked him if she opened it, would it be today? The unspoken part there being most likely, would it be him? And yes is most likely the answer, is he's going to return it to her later, and that will be the day, and that will be the time. The second half of this is Gwen sitting down with Lena and talking to Lena. And the first part is some good barbs back and forth, right? But then we get into Lena actually answering the question as Gwen actually asks for help fully. Dread, these are Lena's words, dread is organized into 4 key elements: death, pain, helplessness, and wrongness. All 4 have to be in balance, and Freddy monitors the levels and lets them know what interventions are required to maintain the balance. But as Gwen points out, the system can only trend upwards. There's no way to minimize it. Lena mentions that the response team used to try reducing the levels, but that it didn't really seem to work very well. So, before we get into the protocol, let's talk about dread. Because dread is different than fear, right? But it could also just be another name for it. Because another name for the fears, the dread powers, right? Definitely don't feel like that's an accident. Dread, if we look at, I've got it in my notes here. I have so many different pages open with notes. If we look at the definition of dread, and I do think it matters that dread is the word they use, right? It is anticipate with great apprehension or fear, right? Greatly feared or dreadful when used as an adjective, and the old archaic version is regarded with awe, greatly revered. So, dread is not just fear, but it is the very anticipation, the expectation of fear. And I think we see that in even our very last case, Sink or Swim, with Monique Bakayoko, where specifically it is the dread of something being in the water that causes the alchemical reaction that creates the thing in the water. It's not just being afraid of it. It, as we said last week, it's giving it form. It is the dread of the specific thing she's worried about. Sam seeing the skeleton on the wall, it's not a fear that the skeleton is not paper. It is a fear, a dread, the expectation that that skeleton is going to get off the wall. And that is exactly what happens. So when we look at our categories, in that way, the skeleton getting off the wall, that would probably be wrongness, right? It's not supposed to do that. That's not supposed to happen. Whereas, I'm getting excited, Bakayoko in the water, that was helplessness, right? Terrified because there was nothing she could do and something might be there. And I'm sure you could blend these, right? But Bonzo would be a mix of death and wrongness, right? That's not how a costume, a mascot, is supposed to work. Whereas Needles would be pain, right? Or helplessness because you couldn't get away. Mowbray would be helplessness for sure, right? Because she's hunting you, she's chasing you down. Maybe a little bit of death in there. Whereas Inksoul would probably be pain or wrongness because the tattoo's not supposed to do that. The tattoo's just supposed to be a tattoo, right? And so there's probably a mix of all of them, little bits of each of them as they add up, right? But I feel like we haven't seen a lot of death unless I'm just forgetting something. I mean, I guess Bonzo kills a lot of people. Mowbray, they all kill people, I guess. But even the drowning with Error, not Error didn't do the drowning. Even the drowning with the water here, that was probably Bakayoko causing these people to drown. My brain is all like twisting right now. Even that is still helplessness, right? But it leads to death. So maybe they all feed death a little bit. Which, if we then try to tie back into alchemy, there were 4 elements that were later 5. There's 4 classifications, as it were, and those are just the ones that they recognize. That for all we know, there could be a 5th, right? But the 4 elements in alchemy are the building blocks of all, like, matter, right? All reality. These 4 horrors, death, pain, these 4 dreads, death, pain, helplessness, and wrongness, are they not the building blocks of fear itself, right? I'm afraid of that because it might kill me. I'm afraid of that because it might hurt me. I'm afraid of that because I have no power, and I'm afraid of that because I don't know what it is. And if we then take the fears from Magnus archives, I almost said protocol, and throw them into that system, many of them fall into those four as well, right? The stranger, the wrongness, what is going on here? What is happening? The hunt, the helplessness, right? And so we're getting there, man. It's all coming together. It's all making sense. We're getting there. I feel like we're so close to understanding what's happening. And then the fact that all four of them have to be in balance and there's no way to reduce them. It reminds me a lot of in archives where the rituals were trying to bring one fear ahead of the other, one entity above the others, right? But even then, they would all eventually catch up. Anyway, they were all one thing and they were just aspects of it. They weren't separate as much as people wanted them to be separate, right? You were still feeding fear even if you served the eye. And once the eye had its ritual completed, everybody else was good. You know, everybody else had power and was able to do things as well. And I feel like that's the same thing here of there is no stopping it per se. Because the best you can do is keep it in balance, and even then all that does is slowly escalate. It's the entropy of the universe itself, right? Of everything is in this weird causal balance, but it always is getting closer and closer to entropic chaos. It's fascinating, and I love that we have taken this course. But also, Gwen asked about the protocol, and the protocol is isolate, gather, control, excise, and subvert, which is exactly what happened with the fires of London, right? Removing all of, why can I not remember his name? Newton, that's his name. Removing all of Newton's silver tree and all his research and everything by bombing everything else. They isolated the problem and they took care of it, right? And then they would blame it on somebody else and subvert it. But no, this was a fascinating episode. And just death, pain, helplessness, and wrongness. And I'm just going to say the person that laid out all that stuff, I think I have their name here somewhere to give them credit for the DPHW stuff. Good on you, because you had it. Bonzo's #1 fan. That was it. I remembered it being something like that, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. But just good on you. You know, you figured it out. Pretty much. And yeah, that's what it is. It's the 4 classification system that everything is contained within. And now we just have to figure out, is there a way, first off, to stop it? Because I feel like that's what happened with the department store, right? They were trying to reduce it instead of increase it, and it didn't seem like it did much. And if not, what is it growing to? What happens as it continues to fill? Because by the way Lena talks about it, something had already gone wrong, but everything should have been fine at the OIAR after she left. But it escalated dramatically. Now, part of that could have been because of the archivist, but if the archivist falls into this world, then it would be the wrongness, right? And so because of Bonzo and the archivist, is the wrongness so out of scale that nothing else can keep up with it, and that's what's causing this, where everything's going wrong. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I feel like we're really close to understanding it. I'm really excited, and hopefully next week's can be a little bit earlier in the week for the episode. But until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum Magnus has to offer.